Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we're doing another Play Art Sky review. I don't know guys, I might be back. I don't know. We'll see. This is the Final Fantasy VII Remake Cloud Strife. And so I just needed to get a Cloud Strife figure, and since the original one was the smaller scale, and I'm sure it's a fine figure, I just didn't want to get that one. I wanted to get the newest one that they were going to put out, which is this one. So it's like the classic look, which I quite like. I didn't want to get the Advent Children look because I don't want the cloth parts on there, and I'm happy with this one, so in terms of the way they did the remake, so that's why I got this one. So I'm happy to review it for you guys. We'll talk about it a little bit, and we'll see if you guys want to get one too. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. And this guy stands just about 10 3/4 inches tall, which makes him just about 27 centimeters, pretty close to that. So he's definitely a size up from before, from the original one they put out. I think the original one might not have even been Kai, it might have just been Play Arts. So it's good to have a tall version of this guy. It's a fairly basic figure. There's not going to be a whole lot to talk about, but they did do some things really nicely. The paint job on this guy is mostly really good. One issue is they shaded the crotch piece a little bit more than the rest of the pants, but it does have that nice blue shading on top of that kind of grayish black. The belts are painted very well. There's actually like this bronzish color, brownish color going throughout the straps in the belt with the shading on the other panels, so that's good. The sweater is sculpted and painted very nicely. Tons of great detail there. I like the way they did the shading on the shoulder pad. The little bolts are painted and sculpted well. These little rivets and straps and things all look really nice. This arm looks really good. I like the straps. I like the wraps, and then the bolts and things again look nice. Same thing for this arm with the various aspects to it. The boots are fairly basic, but they have a clean sculpt and clean paint. And then we have the head, which I think they just nailed. I think it looks really, really good. I'm very, very happy with the way they sculpted the hair, the way they painted the hair. The face is not glossy. The eyes are painted well. It's not perfectly accurate. It looks even a little bit more feminine than I think it should, but that's kind of par for the course for this property, so I think that's okay. But yeah, it looks really, really good. I'm very pleased with it overall. I would say his pants could be sculpted a little bit better, just in that instead of being like a flush thing where they get baggier as they go, they're really baggy, and then his waist is non-existent. So it could look a little better, but once it's posed, it'll be okay. The rest of it we'll talk about when we do the articulation. In terms of accessories, we have 2 fist hands that come on him in the package, 2 normal straight gripping hands, then we have 2 gripping hands that can hold the sword at a bit of an angle. We have 2 relaxed hands. Of course, we have his sword, which looks fantastic. Very, very nicely done. Doesn't weigh too much, so he can hold it pretty well. There could be some poses where you'll have some issues, but I didn't have any trouble posing him, just playing around with him. And then we have a stud that goes in his back so that you can actually put the sword on his back if you want to, or you can just leave it off and you'll be good. So pretty basic figure. You do get that crappy Play Arts Kai display stand, which they're garbage, so we're not going to talk about those. So let's talk about the figure. How's the articulation? Well, it's surprisingly good for the most part, and that's even despite them using some of the things I don't like. Let's talk about the head first. We have a ball peg for the head and for the neck, and technically they're double ball pegs, so you can move it around really well. The collar is a soft piece, so it'll squish some, so that's okay, but you can move it around. There's no huge gapping unless you look down into the collar, then you'll see a little bit, but otherwise, it's pretty good. You will have to do most of your posing at the neck rather than at the head on top of the neck, just because of the tightness of the hair and the jawline to the neck. It doesn't allow that much on top of the neck. Shoulder pad is connected to the torso with an extra piece of plastic in there, so it can actually lean around. There's like a strip that connects to from here to the middle of the shoulder pad, so it moves around really nicely, surprisingly well with the arm. You can raise the arm no problem at all, or you can raise it this way and it still doesn't really hurt the shoulder pad. It still kind of wiggles itself into place, so I'm very happy with that. I think it's nice the way the shoulder pad works. Maybe it would have been better if you connected it to the shoulder itself, but I think it's okay the way it is. The shoulder is connected in this way that I don't care for because it's just so ugly in there, and it is awkward to try to pose it properly. But you do have your ball hinge, so you can rotate the arm around forward on that. This is squishy, but not squishy enough, so you can't really bring it across the chest any, so it doesn't really help that much. You can actually rotate the shoulder up here on that peg, so you can technically use your bicep swivel at the shoulder, but it's going to be kind of tricky. But luckily, they gave you the actual bicep swivel, so that is okay, that's fine. For the elbow, you have your single jointed elbow. Definitely the wrong color plastic. It stands out worse on camera with these lights than it does to the naked eye, but it is noticeable. I didn't ever mention this, but the skin is actually shaded pretty nicely. He's really pale, but the shading is good on there, so it's really a bummer that they used the wrong color plastic for the elbow joint. But you can rotate around the elbow joint if you want to do that as well. For the wrist, you have your ball hinge, good range all the way around, and it's not too obviously ugly, so I think that's okay. Same is true for this side, even though the wrist is a different sculpt, it's pretty much all the same. For the torso, we're back to the hinge and ball peg combination, but the way they did it, it works pretty well. You have to really force it if you want to create a gap in the front, so that's good. You can lean him back, you can lean him forward. It's not the best, but it'll definitely do. Then, of course, it'll rotate around, no problem. It leans from side to side pretty well. Again, it could be better, but it's not terrible. I did notice I have a lot of marks on the skin for this guy, and it's not from me posing him. I didn't notice this one before, so I guess it could be, but I don't see how I could have done that. But on this part, we have quite a few marks throughout here, so it's kind of a bummer. But back to this, he does move around really nicely at the top of the torso, but the bottom, very good range of movement. And that's because we have this belt piece here, this top piece, and this piece, which are technically connected to each other, but they're still kind of free floating. And then we also have the floating crotch piece. So you can just move his torso around all over the place, and it works really well. You will have to play around with the floating crotch piece and the belts so that they don't end up looking like they're just crushed, because they do kind of squish together, but very nice range for the torso. Now for the hips, which are definitely too wide and weird looking, you do have exceedingly good range. So you can bring the leg all the way out to the side, all the way forward, like no problem at all posing this guy. It's going to be fantastic. You do get the rotation out of that hip socket, which is great, but they also gave you a terrible cut joint in the thigh, which is totally unnecessary and never a good idea. So I wish they hadn't done that, but they did. For the knees, now here we do have some issues. They have good range, so that's good. Despite the bagginess, they have really good range, but they're also really, really ugly. They could have done such a better job instead of creating those giant gaps in there. You can live with it, but they should have not done it that way at all. There's no reason to create this cavity for the knee to tuck into. The knee should be kind of flush with it when it closes, and then you don't have a giant cavity. I don't get why they did that. It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense at all. So they shouldn't have done that, but it's not terrible, I guess. For the ankle, it's just your standard ball hinge, but you get really good range going forward, so that's fantastic. Really good range going back, again, fantastic. And of course, you can rotate that around and give yourself a perfect ankle rocker, so that's fantastic. And then lastly, we have a toe hinge. It's well placed on the foot. It goes all the way down to the bottom of the foot, which most companies don't do. And I think they need to, because as you can see, it's so much nicer to not have a giant gap in the bottom of the foot. So I really like that toe hinge. So ultimately, this guy is really good. We have a little bit of an issue with wide hips and ugly knees, but ultimately, they pretty much nailed it. I'm very pleased with this figure. It does come in at the high price point, but as far as I'm concerned with the Play Arts figures, you know that going in. So as long as they don't come riddled with QC issues, then I think it's okay. If you don't want to spend that money, then you won't in the first place. If you don't mind spending the money as long as their QC is good, then they might have turned their stuff around. I'm so far fairly pleased with how they've been doing things. So there you go, guys. I'm going to say I recommend it. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you come back for that. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And in the meantime, keep collecting.